Great. Well, we certainly appreciate so many of you joining us this morning, and we're thrilled to have you. So let's go ahead and get started. So hi everyone, my name is Chris Kearns and I am the Regional Manager for Altis Consulting UK. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Ian Stewart. Ian is one of our Power BI and data visualization specialists, and Ian also heads up our Altis UK training team. Ian's going to be talking to us today about the Altis Power BI template. And in a nutshell, the Altis Power BI template is an accelerator for your Power BI report development. And it has three main benefits. The first is that it's very functionally rich. Second is it speeds up report development. And third is that it promotes consistency in the look and feel of the reports that get created by the template. The Altis Power BI template also leverages our data visualization best practices that we teach. And so watch out for that when Ian's demonstrating a couple of the reports that were built using the template. He'll highlight some of those. Should the Altis Power BI template be of interest to you, then I very much welcome a follow-up conversation. I'll be sending out a follow-up email in the next day or two with a link to a recording of this webinar, and that will include my contact details and Ian's contact details. We certainly welcome a follow-up chat should you be interested in the Altis Power BI template or any of our other services. We have enabled the chat window today, so please feel free to engage with us. We'll be conducting a few polls, so we invite you to participate in those. And we also have the Q&A window open. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A window rather than the chat window. So chat, feel free to engage, but please save your questions for the Q&A window. We'll see those questions and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. All right. So in terms of the agenda we're going to follow today, I'm going to give a brief introduction of Altis. Then I'm going to hand over to Ian, who's going to talk about the Altis Power BI template, and then we'll answer any questions that you pop in the Q&A panel. So please, again, we encourage you to lodge those questions. So briefly about Altis, we are a data and analytics consultancy. We do not sell any software, so we are vendor agnostic. We work with a range of the major tool sets in the data and analytics space. And we see our mission as guiding our clients to become successful data-driven organizations. And that's why we like this image of Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary. As you may know, they were the first known people to summit Mount Everest in 1953. And the role that Tenzing played was very much to support Edmund Hillary and his team to get up the mountain. And that's the role that we see us playing here at Altis in helping our clients achieve scaling their data mountains, whatever that may be. We're about 155 people big in our team, and we're across the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Whilst we don't sell any software, we do partner with all the major players in the data and analytics space. And in terms of what it is that we do, we're very much focused on helping our clients achieve their outcomes supported by data. So whatever those outcomes might be. And we do that through three pillars of service. On the left, we have our advisory services. And one of the main things we do here is help our clients devise a data roadmap. And we do that by helping them understand where they are with data analytics today, where they want to get to in the future, and helping them chart a prioritized path for getting there. Our second pillar of services is delivery, and that's where we'll often help our clients execute the steps in that roadmap, whether that's building data platforms, data warehouses, data lakes, Power BI reporting solutions, delivering training, etc. And our third pillar of services is managed services. So that's where our clients will often outsource the support and management of their data estates to us. Everything that we do is supported by our frameworks and best practices that we've been evolving since 1998. And everything that also we do is imbued with our ethos of connecting with courage, heart, and insight. We also provide a lot of training at Altis, and this picture here focuses on our Power BI training program. I'll include this in our follow-up email. But as I mentioned as well, we teach data visualization best practices, and Ian's going to highlight some of those today. As a thank you for attending today, we've got a webinar 10 discount code that you can use to book any public training. And if you book by 31st of March, you can get a 10% discount using that discount code. In terms of our upcoming webinars, we like to host webinars on a regular basis. The next one is 18th of April, and it's going to be an introduction to our data visualization best practices. It's a very popular one, so I encourage you to check that out. We'll include that in the link to that in the follow-up email as well. That's enough for me from now. I'm going to hand over to Ian. Ian, I'll invite you to share your screen, and he's going to be talking about creating consistent quality reports in Power BI using the Altis Power BI template. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good morning, everybody. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen, Chris. Thank you. So before I get into the meat of what I'm going to talk to you about, a little bit about me. So I have been programming since 1980, where I learned to program calculators as a trainee land surveyor, and in the 90s I moved into IT by means of a master's in information systems, where I learned all about databases and how to design databases, and then I transitioned into that. And for the past 15 years I've been working in business intelligence or data and analytics, and I've also moved more and more into the front end of that, the data visualization aspect. And so I've been using Power BI since it was new in 2015, and I use it virtually every day. And also I am a student of data visualization best practices. I've been studying that since I joined Altis in 2015 as well. And I now teach our training in data visualization best practices. And I'll be showing you some of data visualization practices that the Altis template brings to bear as we go through our demonstrations. So what I'm going to talk to you about is what is a Power BI template, and then why we should think about using one. And then I'm going to drop into a couple of demonstrations. Firstly, some example reports that we've built using the Altis Power BI template, and then how you use the template hands-on. Finally, I'm going to talk about where you could go from here. So a Power BI template at the highest level is simply a collection of Power BI objects that can be reused. So those objects might be report pages, charts, titles, bookmarks, buttons, anything that you can put in a report can be saved as a template. It includes the data model definition, if indeed there is data within your template. So the schema, the relationships, measures, column sorts, column formats, these types of things. Also, any queries and the parameters and functions that go into bringing your data into Power BI. And it will also include a Power BI theme file. Now, that may be a default Power BI theme file supplied by Microsoft, or it could be a custom theme file. So before I go into why we would use a, thought I was going on to the next slide, but there's a few more things on here. So the report's data itself is not included in the template, so therefore the file size is quite small. It's just the metadata to connect to the data. And to differentiate template files from Power BI desktop files, they use a .pbit extension, whereas a desktop file will use a .pbix. So before I go into the why, just a quick poll. on whether you are currently using a Power BI template and a custom Power BI theme file. It may be you're using one or the other, maybe you're using both or neither. I can see the results coming in there. And I think we've got 72% of you, 75%. Let's get it over 80. There we are, over 80. Do you want to share those results, Chris? So no surprise, because you're here on this call, that most of you are not using a Power BI template. Some of you are using a theme file, and just a few of you using both a custom theme file and a template. So I hope you go away from today encouraged to use both, and I will show you why very shortly. Thank you for that. So why use a Power BI template? As Chris mentioned in his intro, it's going to speed up development. And if we are building reports or managing those that are building reports, we probably want to get them out of the door faster. There's always pressure on us to deliver faster. We want them to be consistent in the way that they look and feel, so that there's less danger of confusing our audience. They know where the title is, they know where the help button is, they know what the colors mean, so that they are used to a particular look and feel. We would hope that they are functionally rich, that they leverage the power of Power BI rather than the knowledge of a particular developer. And they should definitely conform to data visualization best practice. They should use color effectively. They should be laid out in a logical manner. All of that leads to high quality deliverables. And the good news is that our template, the Altis Power BI template, provides all of these benefits. Just a little bit more on the why. If we take a typical Power BI development team where we have Mary, Fred, and Joe, Mary has extensive experience with Power BI and other reporting tools, has attended data visualization best practices and practices that, and her reports and dashboards are functionally rich, easy to use, and pleasing to the eye, and they tell clear stories. So here's a report that Mary has produced. It's actually on Power BI usage. And we can see there in the title, it tells you what it's all about. And Mary has cleverly called out the legend in the title there, so we can see the active objects are in blue and the inactive or dormant objects are in red. And just below the title there, we can see very clearly that we've got a lot of inactive workspaces, dashboards, and reports that we probably need to focus in on and start retiring some of them. We can clearly see trends over time on the right of our usage. So that's a very nice, clear report from Mary, tells a nice story. Fred has got good experience with Power BI. He has not attended data visualization best practices training, and his reports are functionally rich, but not particularly easy to use. And it's sometimes hard to get a clear story. So here we have one of Fred's reports. We can see that color has been used, overused, and not consistently used. There's a questionable choice of chart types there and layout. It's very hard to see some things. It's hard to see some labels. And when you look at the overall report, you wonder what the message is. What's the main message, and what are we meant to look at first? Joe is new to the team and new to Power BI and reporting in general. They've not been provided with any training whatsoever, which is fairly common, and so are entirely self-taught. So their reports are basic and hard to use and make sense of, and they fall short aesthetically. The message is very unclear. This is something that Joe's put together, and as we look at it, we can see, well, color hasn't been overused, but it's not particularly consistent. fonts are different sizes, things are overlapping, and we really just don't know where to look. What is the main message here? What's the flow? It's very, very hard to understand. So another poll for you. Whose reports do those in your organization most resemble? Those of Mary, those of Fred, or those of Joe? Or perhaps it's a mixture. Just seeing those come in. Up to 78%, 80-odd% of you responded. So let's share those results, and they don't surprise me. So it's good to see that some of you are producing reports like Mary's. That's great. I did expect most of them to look like Fred's, and definitely a mixture of those. And it's the mixture which is probably the worst thing. So yeah, thank you for that. So why did we develop the Altis Power BI template? Well, we've worked with lots of development teams like Mary, Fred and Joe, and we've seen many reports and dashboards that take a long time to develop, but they are still inconsistent across teams and across individual developers within teams sometimes. They don't necessarily leverage the power of Power BI, they leverage the individual knowledge of the developers, which may be more advanced or less. And they don't conform to best practice very often. So we saw the opportunity to make our experience and collateral available to our clients. We've got a lot of knowledge of Power BI. We've got 150 plus consultants, and a lot of them have been using Power BI for many, many years. We also practice data visualization best practice and teach it. We are one of the few consultancies I know of that do that. And we had guidelines for chart types, colors, and best practices. We also developed a rich Power BI theme file, defaulting to best practices rather than to Power BI defaults. And so we went ahead and developed the Altis Power BI template. So I'm now going to drop in to a couple of demonstrations, firstly to show you some reports built using the Altis Power BI template, and then how to use the template itself. So without further ado, let me go across to show you this report. So this is female versus male enrolments in UK higher education by subject area. And obviously I've read that from the title, and the title is at the top of the report and towards the left. Research tells us that all things being equal, that's where we look first when we look at a dashboard or a website. So it's a good idea to have our title there, which gives us the context for the whole report. So that's data visualization best practice as a starter. Couple more things going on in the title. Again, like Mary's report, we've called out the legend in the title here. So female is blue, male is orange, and as long as we are consistent and minimal with color, we never need use a legend again. Cole Nussbaum and Affleck, who wrote the book, The Storytelling with Data, talks about eliminating clutter from our reports. And lots of legends would be clutter. So if we don't need them, leave them off. Also in the title, it is dynamic. So you'll see at the end, it says all years. But if I click on a year over here, you'll see that that title updates to reflect that the report is now filtered for the academic year 2020-2021. I can click on the other academic year shown here to change that. Click again to unselect. To the right of the title, we have three buttons. The first is our data dictionary button. So this is included in the template. Every report has the data dictionary button that takes us across to the data dictionary, which I've already rendered in another window here. So just to show you what the data dictionary looks like, it's here. So we can look up any particular attribute we like and get and understand what that attribute is. Just like that. So that's the data dictionary button. And then to the right of the data dictionary button, we have an information button, which if I click this, it tells me who the report author is, when the data was last refreshed, and where the data has come from. You may want to put different things in an information panel as well, or extra things. And also to the right of this, we have a help button, which overlays the whole report with a translucent help page, so to speak, calling out certain things on the page and telling us how to use it. Clicking anywhere, that will disappear. In a similar manner, on each visual, as I hover over them, you'll see a little question mark. And as I hover over the question mark, that brings up help just for that visual. And you'll see that every single one of them is different help. So this general principle of making help available on demand is, again, it's a data visualization best practice element. We need to see help when we first use a report and perhaps periodically thereafter. So we don't need help as an introductory page or cluttering up our page after we've got familiar with it. Rather, we want it on demand. In the middle here, we have a couple of tables of data, but it's not a good idea just to present numbers in tables of data. Otherwise, you may as well just give people Excel. But we're in the business of data visualization, and in data visualization, we want to make things pop. If we just give them numbers, they will have to serially process each row and try to compare it with the others, and we're not very good at that. What we are good at is determining a difference in bar length and seeing those red dots on the right. What are the red dots all about? Well, if we could go back to our help, it will tell us what the red dots are about. It's denoting negative female growth. But also, if we hover over a particular row, we get a custom tooltip coming up here, which tells me just below the header, it tells me in the header what I've hovered over, which is a good idea because I can't actually see that behind with the tooltip. So it's a good idea to remind people where they've come from. But underneath that, it tells me what the red dot signifies. And there we can see more detail at a glance for business in management. And as we hover over other rows, we can see more detail there. So without any effort, we're giving our user the ability to scan the big picture and then just see a little bit more detail. And also on the bottom of this, notice I'm invited to right click to drill through to the subject area for more detail. So drill through to the subject drilled down. So now I've done a little bit of work as an end user to get a lot more detail. So if I wanted to know why I was getting negative growth, this might lead to more detail and a conclusion. Good. I think that's about all I wanted to show you on this particular demonstration. Oh, let me just contrast a standard tooltip here. So this is the tooltip that you get out of the box with Power BI, and this is a custom tooltip. So you can see we can make them a lot richer. Sometimes the standard tooltips will do what you need. You don't need anything more. Sometimes you want a lot more detail. Good. Let me go back to my slides a second and just show you another report built using the template. Some of you have seen this one before. It's our Londonshire University report. And again, you'll see a lot of data visualization best practice features here, minimal use of color, not just using color. So we're using blue and a tick for good and red and an exclamation mark for bad as an example. So that's just another report built using the template. So using the Power BI template, Mary, Fred and Joe can all produce consistent best practice reports. So we might task Mary with building an operations report and Fred with building a sales and proposals report and Joe with building a finance report. But when they build them, because they use the template, they all end up looking similar. The colors are consistent, the title is in the same place, they all have the data dictionary button, the information panel and the help button all in the same place, but there's different visuals in different places. They've used the visuals that they need to tell the particular stories for their dashboards. But how do they use the template? Let me drop over to Explorer here, File Explorer, and the first where we start is with the PBIT file, the Power BI template file. And we need to make this accessible to all of our developers, so we have it in a central shared location. And to start developing using the template, we simply double click it. That fires up Power BI. And whilst that's firing up, I'll tell you what else is in the folder here that we ship with the template. There's a theme file. So the template contains a theme file, but we ship it separately as well. And this theme file would be tailored to your organization's corporate colors and your preferences. It's not just about colors, there's other defaults in there. We also ship a rich date table or date dimension with it in the form of a comma separated values file. You may or may not need this, but if you don't have one, virtually every Power BI report you build will need a date dimension, so we give you this as well. And there's also a guidance manual on how you use the template, which again you would tailor for your organization to match your processes. The Power BI has fired up, and when it fires up, I am asked for a couple of parameters. So who's the author? What's the path to the data dictionary? And what is the path to that date dimension, the date CSV file? When I've entered those, I simply press load, and that will load the data. The data is minimal. It's we recommend with the template not to ship much data, if any, because you will want to connect to your own data. So the data that we ship with the template is just for populating the visuals and to give you a date dimension. So the visuals that you're seeing use the sample data, so they don't necessarily make a great deal of sense, but it's just to give you some sample visuals. So a couple of things I want to point out about the template. Firstly, think of this as a raw template. It's a set of building blocks which you can use to build your own reports. Your reports are going to look very different to this. They'll be using your template, your theme file, so the colors would probably be different, but you're not necessarily going to use a column chart and a line chart and a table and a scatter plot in this order. You might use some of them. So you can take any one of these, repurpose it, move it around, as I'll show you shortly. The other thing, again, just to reiterate, the data here is not your data. So we give you a nice rich date dimension, as you see there. But the first thing that you will want to do, or one of the first things you will want to do, is get data and perhaps connect to a Power BI data set that you've already created. So what's in the template? We have a title here, top left, which is dynamic. So if I click on a year down here, you'll see that the title updates. We have a subtitle there that's calling out the legend. So random measure 1 is the dark grey columns and random measure 2 is the light grey. there on the light grey line there. But if I don't want the subtitle in my report, I can simply delete it. To the right, I have my data dictionary button, and to the right of that, which takes me to the same data dictionary, and to the right of that, I have our information panel, which if I click on that now, you'll see that I am the report author because I entered that into the parameter, and you can see that the data was just refreshed. We also have the help overlay here. Now, of course, this help overlay is going to need to be changed for your report. So you can move these bubbles and things around. You can delete them. You can copy them. You can change the text in them to suit what you want to show. So then some examples of best practice charts, and on the charts you'll see that we have the little help in the header there. Again, the little help icon, that's a standard visual header help tooltip, but on this one down here we have a custom visual header tooltip, and we also give you the tooltip pages. You need the tooltip pages in order to surface those tooltips. So there are our custom visual header tooltip pages, which are hidden and invoked when we hover over the relevant question mark. So very simple column chart and line chart there. And then we have a table here, which is utilizing data bars and icons. These icons here, by the way, are custom icons. So if I go into conditional formatting and we look at those icons, if we look in this drop down of the style of icons, we don't see that little red dot there. These are the standard Power BI icons. We felt all of them were a bit over fussy. We simply wanted a red dot, just a red dot, no border around it, no fanciness. So we added our dots to our theme file, and there you can see them at the bottom. So you don't see them there, but you do see them here. So we've got a red dot and a hollow red dot. So red dot for bad, hollow red dot for half bad or amber, and a blue dot if we wanted it for good, and a grey dot as well if we wanted something different. More often than not, we would just use the red dots to bring attention to things that need our attention. If we put dots on everything, they lose their impact. Moving across here, we have a scatter plot with a couple of KPIs. They have been grouped together to make them appear as one, so that our user associates those KPIs with the scatter plot. Again, data visualization best practice techniques. So that's done just by grouping, but it may be for our report that we don't need the scatter plot at all, so we're just going to delete that, but we do need a KPI, and we might want to position that up there, and perhaps our report is about sales. By the way, the title is controlled by a measure, so we have a report title here, and you'll see in there it's using some DAX, and some of the DAX is some literal text, so I can change template to sales report and hit return, and then click on something else, and once the twirly thing has done its business, we'll see it's now called a sales report. And if we connect to our sales data, then this KPI here may be our sales for this year based upon our target sales. Then we've got an example bar chart over to the right there, again, that we may want to use or repurpose. We do have drill to available here and a custom tooltip as well. So there I can see details for June. And again, you can see down the bottom of the tooltip that I'm being invited to right click to drill through for further detail, which takes me to another page with a lot more detail for July in this case. And that has a back button top left. So you'll see on the right there's quite a few measures that we include, including metadata, who's the author, when was the data last refreshed. And that is how we go about using the template. We can then publish to our workspace and away we go. So again, if you've got any questions on that, do raise them in the Q&A and we'll address them at the end. So just to reiterate what we include in the Altis Power BI template, there's the template file itself. There's the supporting files that come with it, the Power BI theme file, a date dimension, and a guidance manual. So where do you go from here? So you've got really three choices. As I said, you could do nothing. I hope you don't. I hope you've seen the value in having a rich, functional template that conforms to best practice. So I hope that you do something. There's nothing to stop you creating your own Power BI template. The initial steps to do that are trivial. It's just file save as a PBIT. However, you can imagine the amount of work that has gone into ours. It's literally weeks and weeks and weeks of work to develop, first of all, the theme file and then the template itself. And that is backed up by years worth of knowledge and experience. So it doesn't come easily. So if you've got good experience, nothing to stop you developing your own. Also, you could use our Altis Power BI template as an accelerator. So to get you going a lot faster and to perhaps move you forward in your Power BI journeys many weeks, months, or even years. To summarize the benefits, it's going to make developing individual reports much faster. We don't have to develop that help overlay every time. We don't have to develop the little button for the data dictionary. We don't have to develop dynamic titles, all of these sorts of things that take a lot of time. By default, our reports are going to look and feel similar. So developers would have to go out of their way to make them look inconsistent. They do leverage a lot of the power of Power BI. They are functionally rich. A lot of the things that I've shown you are advanced techniques, and they do conform to data visualization best practice and give you examples of lots of best practice visuals to use. That all means that they are high quality, and it means that Mary, Fred, and Joe can all produce high quality reports. Just to say again that those two main messages about the template, think of it as being building blocks. Your reports are all going to look somewhat different, as do Mary's, Fred's, and Joe's, dependent on the user requirements and the stories they need to tell and the data that they're connecting to. And also your theme will use different colors to ours. I think that's all I wanted to cover. So I'm going to hand back to Chris to wrap up and curate your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ian. That was super interesting. So please do feel free to add your questions into the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those at the end. I just wanted to mention that we've also taken the time through our years of Power BI experience to develop a Power BI framework. And I'm not going to go through this entire framework that's on the screen at the moment, but I do want to highlight that the Power BI template that Ian has just taken you through fits into this one little box here, which is our process, our swim lane, if you like, for the process to gather requirements, develop reports, test them, and deploy them. And you'll see that part of that development process is using our Power BI template and theme file, as well as our data dictionary, our unit testing checklist, our peer review checklist, to produce something like on the right here, a report created using the Altis Power BI template. I mention all of that because this entire Power BI framework is available for sale for our clients, not just our Power BI template. So if you're interested in a broader conversation about the Altis Power BI framework, I certainly welcome the opportunity to have that chat. Or if you're just interested in the Power BI template and theme file and Power BI data dictionary, very happy to have a chat about that as well. So I'll be providing my contact details and Ian's contact details in the follow-up email that you'll receive in the next few days. It'll take a few days for our marketing team to have the recording of the webinar ready. In terms of the Power BI template itself, as Ian mentioned, it includes the template file, the theme file, the date dimension, and the guidance manual. All of that we sell for £15,000. We are also for you today offering the inclusion of the Altis Power BI Data Dictionary at no extra cost. And we typically would recommend 5 days consulting on top of that from us to help you tailor the Power BI theme file to your corporate standards. That can be your colors, your fonts, your layouts, etc. To adapt the Power BI template to your needs. So it might be creating a slightly more custom version for you, and to then help you start building your first reports using the Altis Power BI template. So I guess just to, before I launch into questions, wrap up around Ian's commentary around the benefits of the template. It's threefold. It's functionally rich, it speeds up your report development, and it promotes consistency and look and feel across your reports, as you saw with Mary, Fred, and Joe personas that we had on the screen. Before I launch into questions, I'll just give you a second to absorb this cartoon that you may have seen before. And the punchline is that the customer really just needed something quite straightforward, but everyone interpreted it really differently. And so the customer probably wasn't very satisfied with the report they got. So the way that we overcome that at Altis is by working in an iterative manner. And that is, we develop something quickly, we show it to our stakeholders for feedback, make changes, show it for feedback, and we go through that loop as quickly and as many times as we can. And we use this approach in not only report development using the Power BI template, but everything we do, even with our data platform, data warehousing projects, etc. And so just to give you a feel for the Altis approach. I'm going to leave this very busy screen up here while we're answering your questions. Just to highlight again, we've got another webinar coming up on the 18th of April, our data visualization best practices. We've got this discount code here, webinar 10. If you want to use that for booking any of our public courses, you get 10% off. There's details here on the pricing of our Power BI template. There's details here on our pricing of our training. And here is information about our training that we have on offer. So feel free to take a screenshot of this if you want to share this information internally. Again, we will be sending a follow-up email with a recording of the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to drop into the Q&A. And the first one I've got for you, Ian, is from Katie. Where do you save the data definitions for the dictionary?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. You've got choices there. So the simplest form of a data dictionary is just to have a governed spreadsheet. And just point Power BI at that. So your developers, part of the process would be that they fill in that spreadsheet, but that's a governed spreadsheet. So that would be looked after by the team in charge of your data governance. It could be a SharePoint list. It could be a SQL Server database. And it could also pull the data, or a lot of the data, from the Power BI metadata. I hope that answers that question.
Out of the box, as it stands now, our Power BI data dictionary uses a spreadsheet as a source. And as Ian said, that's a governed spreadsheet. There are alternatives. Katie also asks, can we apply a template retrospectively to an existing report? Ian.
No, initially I thought you could, because when you go to Power BI, there's a function to import a template, but it's a little bit misleading because rather than importing a template, it just opens up a new instance of Power BI and gives you a blank. It gives you the template as a blank report again, an untitled report. So it is harder to apply a template retrospectively. You need to copy and paste visuals from the old into the template. So it's a lot harder work. So I think that's the message from that is get your template in place early so you don't have to retrospectively retrofit them.
What I would also say, though, is obviously in the process of originally developing your reports, you've learned a lot. You've understood the business requirements. You've understood the business rules to put in place in a report. So a lot of that requirements gathering knowledge can be expedited into the new Power BI template. Stuart asks, do you feel it is still better to do drill through with a right click rather than using a drill through button?
I would say so generally, Stuart. There is a depends question there, but having a button on your page is taking up real estate. If we can train our users to do drill through, then we don't have to have a separate button and it becomes more intuitive. Particularly if you saw in the demonstrations where we used a custom tooltip. So they got something without having to do anything, and that told them in the custom tooltip, right click to drill through. So that saves us having a button. It automatically filters the data to what we want to see. So if that's what you want to do, then I would generally gravitate towards not having extra buttons on our page.
Thanks, Ian. Rabia has asked, what are the best data visuals for which data types? And I think I'll take that one, and maybe you can add to it, Ian. That's a big question, and it's a question that we cover in quite a lot of detail in our data visualization best practices training. So I encourage you to check out the URL for our training page, which will be in the email as well, to see what upcoming dates we have for public training, or perhaps if there's a large enough group you might be interested in engaging us to deliver a data visualization best practices training course directly for your organization. Ian, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Just to say, I think that the data visualization best practices training is probably one of the most needed training courses that we see. We do a lot of Power BI dashboard in a day training, and we meet a lot of people through that, and we get to see a lot of reports and dashboards, and we poll our attendees of Power BI dashboard in a day to see if anybody has had any training in that, and we find that less than 5% of people that are presenting data have had any training in presenting data. Quite remarkable. So yes, do you use a bar chart or a column chart or a line chart to tell a particular story? What colors should you use? All of that is super important. And if we choose the wrong charts, we can either make it just very difficult for our audience to get the message, or inadvertently, we may even mislead them.
Thanks, Ian. And as I like to say, you can be an expert in Power BI, yet still create ugly reports that no one understands. So importantly, if you want to understand the art and the science behind data storytelling, I'd certainly encourage you to check out that course. Somebody who's anonymous has asked if the Altis Power BI template allows you to pull data from multiple data sources to visually paint the picture.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's one of the main messages. So the template is that collection of objects, collection of building blocks that you can use. Some things you will definitely want to have, and they will be the same from report to report, like the position of the title and the position of the help button. But the data is not impacted. You can still pull data from as many sources as you want and use it in the template.
Thank you. I'm going to ask how much the template costs. That information's on the screen. We also have somebody asking, how can we guide users to explore a dashboard using design? Example, guide them through to drill through where available, slices, cross-filtering, etc.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things in that question. So thanks for bringing that up. There's, first of all, our users, if they get consistent reports, will understand the conventions of the reports. They'll start to understand that if they hover over things, they're going to get tooltips. If they right click on things, they're going to drill through. They know where the help button is. So they will get used to all of those things, but also because we give them a help button, we tell them, and we give them the little help icons at the top of each visual as well. We tell them how to use the reports. So I think it will be familiarity as well as telling them through help. And of course, there's nothing to stop us recording some videos, doing some town hall sessions when we start to release things, preparing users for what is coming, and managing that deployment and setting user expectations really is all part of that Power BI framework that Chris spoke about. That's a very important part of it.
Somebody asks why we don't have borders around the charts that you showed in the sample reports, Ian.
Yeah, so I spoke briefly about Cole Nussbaum and Affleck, who is a giant in the data visualization best practice space. There's also lots of others, Stephen Few, Edward Tufte, who wrote the book, The Visual Display of Quantitative Information. That's a word I always struggle with. Edward Tufte coined the phrase data ink and non-data ink. So data ink, as an example, would be the columns on a column chart. Everything else on the column chart, such as grid lines, the title of the chart, data labels, borders, background colors, all of that is non-data ink. And Edward Tufte goes on to talk about minimizing non-data ink, so less is more. So when it comes to borders, what we use is a gray background and white visuals, and that makes the visuals stand out. It negates the need for a border. So when you look at your reports, when you look at reports that have been developed and your own reports, the test is to critique your reports and remove non-data ink, and remove as much as you can possibly remove without losing meaning. That's the test. If you lose meaning, then you put it back on. If you don't lose meaning, you leave it off. So try it with the border, take the border away. Do you lose any meaning? If you don't, leave it off.
Thanks, Ian. And Rabia, yes, we will provide links to those books that Ian mentioned in the follow-up email as well. Again, we'll have a link to the webinar recording. We'll have links to our upcoming webinars, links to our training courses, pricing information, etc. will all be contained in the follow-up email. And again, I welcome the opportunity to have a follow-up meeting with yourselves and your colleagues or managers if you'd like to discuss how we can help you either with the Power BI template, the Power BI, Altis Power BI framework, or anything else that we might be able to assist you with in that regard. Any other final questions in our few minutes? Please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I'll just quickly check the chat window again to see if anything else slips through in there. I think that's everything covered in the chat window. Any final questions? Otherwise, we'll give you the gift of time. Nothing coming in. Well, 4 minutes of gift of time to you to claw back today. Ian, thanks very much for a fantastic webinar today. Thank you everybody for attending. We always feel very encouraged when we see so many people joining our webinars, but there's such an interest in the data and analytics community, not just in Power BI, but in the broader topic. So thanks again. Please keep an eye out on our monthly newsletter for upcoming webinars. And thanks very much for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.